Not every battle wants to be remembered. Some are too shameful, too bloody, too honest. We celebrate Stalingrad as heroism. We glorify Normandy as victory. But there is one battlefield from World War II so horrific that even the side who won tried to erase it from history. Imagine a place where millions of men were sent to die, not because of brilliant strategy, not because of tactical genius, but because the only plan was to keep feeding the machine with human bodies. There was no glory there, no heroic last stands, no heroic final moments, only an enormous mechanism of death, grinding flesh, bone, and sanity. Day after day, for more than a year, that place was called Rzhev. And the men who survived didn't call it a battle. They called it the meat grinder, a place where human life was fed into the machine without pause. In the early winter of 1942, the snow had barely begun to fall, but the terror was already palpable. The Red Army prepared to attack. Wave after wave of untrained soldiers would soon march into hell. Artillery tore through the forests, turning trees into splinters. Rockets screamed through the air, the infamous Stalin organs wailing death. Then the whistle blew, WWII. Thousands of Soviet infantry surged forward across open ground. They ran through knee-deep mud, becoming easy targets. German machine gunners opened fire, cutting them down like wheat. The second wave stumbled over the corpses of the first. Political commissars drove them forward with pistols at their backs. In some sectors, the Soviet assault was so dense that German machine guns overheated. The shooters, at first hunters, became witnesses to their own madness. In one sector, a Soviet unit was trapped in a low, marshy valley. They were surrounded on three sides by German artillery on higher ground. Weeks passed, and they lived in shallow water holes. They could not lift their heads without being shot by snipers. Food supplies were cut off. Drinking water mixed with blood and filth from decomposing comrades. The freezing winter returned. The mud hardened into granite-like earth. They could no longer dig protective trenches. So the survivors used the only material available, the bodies of their fallen comrades. Spring came, melting the frozen snow. The earth revealed what had been hidden for months, fields of rotting corpses. The stench was so strong it could be smelled by reconnaissance planes hundreds of meters above. In the German trenches, soldiers soaked handkerchiefs in gasoline to keep the nausea at bay. But the smell wasn't the only problem. Rats infested Rzhev in grotesque numbers. They grew fat and fearless, feeding on the corpses. They even attacked soldiers who were sleeping or wounded. In summer 1942, the Soviets launched a massive offensive, Operation Mars. Hundreds of tanks and hundreds of thousands of new soldiers were sent into the meat grinder. Tanks got stuck in the marshes and were destroyed one by German anti-tank artillery. Infantry accompanying them were left exposed, raked by mortars and air bombs. In the Mongol forest, brutal close-quarter battles raged. The forest burned completely. Soldiers fought with shovels, bayonets, and bare hands among the charred trees. The ground was a red, horrid mix of metal, bone, and flesh. The fate of wounded Soviet soldiers was the most tragic. Due to relentless attacks, medics often could not evacuate them. Thousands were left in no man's land, the land between trenches. They lay there for days, crying for help, calling out for their mothers. German machine gunners, initially confident, began to break mentally. They were forced to become operators of a human grinder. Killing so many people day after day shattered their souls. Many experienced hallucinations, seeing corpses rise and march toward them. On the Soviet side, discipline was enforced through terror. NKVD and barrier troops were stationed behind the attacking lines with machine guns. Their task was simple: shoot anyone who retreated. Soviet soldiers were trapped between two inevitable deaths. One of the most heartbreaking stories came from a battalion ordered to capture a small, unnamed hill. They attacked in the morning and were slaughtered. At noon, a new battalion was sent over the same hill, stepping on the corpses of their comrades. By night, the 3rd Battalion followed, and the hill was still in German hands, but covered in layers of dead bodies. The city of Rzhev, once an old town with cathedrals, had been leveled. Only ruins of brick and smokestacks remained like tombstones. Civilians who survived lived like animals in earth holes, trapped in this man-made apocalypse. After more than a year of relentless slaughter, the end of the Rzhev battle came not with a glorious explosion, but with a bewildering silence. Of 56,000 inhabitants of Rzhev before the war, only about 150 to 300 remained alive. They were found hiding in the old cathedral, rigged with German bombs, which were fortunately defused just in time. The rest had died or been deported. The city itself no longer existed. Rzhev had been erased from the map, replaced by craters and piles of bricks. Around the city, fields were still filled with hundreds of thousands of unburied Soviet soldiers' corpses. Their bones would continue to be discovered by local farmers for decades after the war. Technically, Rzhev was won by the Soviets, but at a cost so astronomical that the word victory felt disgusting to utter. Estimates vary because archives were destroyed or hidden, but historians believe total casualties in the Rzhev sector reached over 2 million from both sides. For Stalin and the Soviet leadership, Rzhev was a shame. It was evidence of their incompetence, a monument to Zhukov's ruthless tactics. Therefore, a decision was made: Rzhev had to be forgotten. Unlike Stalingrad or Leningrad, which were glorified as hero cities, Rzhev was erased from official history. Today, a massive memorial stands in Rzhev. A soldier's body transforms into a flock of cranes flying into the sky. It is a beautiful but deeply sad monument. The story of Rzhev teaches us a lesson often forgotten in heroic war films. War is often not about clever tactics or bravery. A famous Russian poem is titled, "I was killed near Rzhev." One verse reads, "I am no longer there. I am dust. I am grass. But in the silence, my voice is still heard. Do not forget us." They may not have received glory like at Stalingrad, but that is precisely why their story in the meat grinder must continue to be told, so we remember the price paid when humanity is stripped from the battlefield.